At 70, Barbara finally admitted something she had been avoiding for years. Her house wasn't too big, she wasn't too old, and she wasn't bad at keeping things clean. The problem was the stuff. Little by little, over many years, she had filled her home with things that made everyday life harder. Her kitchen cabinets were packed so tightly that opening one sometimes sent something falling onto the counter. Her closet was full of clothes she rarely wore. Her bathroom shelves held products she couldn't even remember buying. And her dining table had slowly turned into a landing place for mail, receipts, shopping bags, and anything else she didn't know where to put. Barbara kept trying to clean around all of it. But one afternoon, her daughter came over, looked around the kitchen, and asked a simple question. "Mom, do you actually use all of this?" Barbara laughed. Then she stopped, because she already knew the answer. A lot of the things in her home weren't helping her anymore. They were creating work. So Barbara changed the question. Instead of asking, "What can I clean?" she started asking, "What is making my home harder to manage?" That one question changed the way she looked at everything. Over the next few months, Barbara found 8 categories of belongings that were quietly making her daily life more difficult. And once she dealt with them, her home didn't just look better. It became easier to live in. Before we get into the 8 things, I want to know if you've already done this. If you've ever gotten rid of something because it was making your home harder to manage, comment 1 below. Maybe it was a closet full of clothes you never wore. Maybe it was a kitchen drawer full of gadgets. Or maybe you finally got rid of something you were only keeping because you felt guilty. Just comment 1 if you've done it. And keep watching, because number 8 is one of the hardest things for many people to let go of. Number 1, too many clothes. Barbara's closet was the first place she tackled. It was full. Yet every morning, she still felt like she had nothing to wear. She had sweaters she hadn't touched in years, pants that no longer felt comfortable, shoes she kept because they had been expensive, and clothes that belonged to a version of herself she simply wasn't anymore. The problem wasn't only the amount of clothing. It was the work that came with owning it. Every morning, Barbara had to move several pieces just to reach the clothes she actually wore. So she stopped asking whether something was technically wearable. Instead, she asked 3 questions. Would I choose this today? Is it comfortable? And if I saw it in a store today, would I buy it again? If the answer was no, it went into a donation bag. But Barbara didn't empty her entire closet. She started with 10 pieces. That was enough. She discovered something important. Having fewer clothes didn't make getting dressed harder. It made it easier. She could see what she owned. She could reach what she needed. And she no longer had to fight through a crowded closet every morning. Your closet doesn't need to hold every version of you that you've ever been. It needs to hold the clothes that work for the life you're living now. Number 2, kitchen gadgets she never used. The second category was harder. Kitchen gadgets. Barbara had collected them slowly. A slicer here, a specialty pan there, a gadget she bought because it was on sale, another because the advertisement promised it would make cooking faster. But instead of making life easier, they were filling drawers and cabinets. One afternoon, Barbara opened a drawer and found 3 different tools designed to do almost the same job. She kept the one she actually used. The other 2 went. Then she opened another drawer, then another. Her new rule became simple. If something had one very specific purpose and she rarely used it, she questioned whether it deserved valuable storage space. This wasn't about owning a minimalist kitchen. Barbara loved cooking. She kept the tools she genuinely enjoyed using. She simply stopped giving rarely used gadgets the best storage space in the house. And the difference was immediate. Drawers opened properly. Cabinets were easier to reach into. And she stopped moving 5 things just to find 1 spoon. Sometimes decluttering isn't about owning less. It's about creating enough space to use what you already own. Number 3, duplicates. Then Barbara discovered something that made her shake her head. Duplicates. 4 pairs of scissors. 3 can openers. Multiple measuring cups. Extra towels. Duplicate cleaning products. several kitchen utensils that did almost exactly the same thing. She hadn't bought all of these because she wanted more stuff. She had bought them because she couldn't find the ones she already owned. She would search. She wouldn't find something, so she'd buy another. Then the new one would disappear under everything else. And eventually, she'd buy another. Barbara realized she wasn't solving a storage problem. She was creating one. From then on, she made herself follow one simple rule. Before buying a replacement, look for the original. And before keeping several versions of the same thing, ask how many you realistically need. She didn't need 4 pairs of scissors. She needed 1 pair she could actually find. That became one of her biggest lessons. Sometimes clutter makes you buy more clutter. When you can't see what you own, you assume you don't have it. Removing duplicates didn't just create space. It also saved Barbara money. Number 4. Paper she didn't need. Paper was one of Barbara's biggest daily frustrations. Her dining table had slowly become a temporary office. Bills, catalogs, receipts, old newspapers, instructions, junk mail, things she planned to read, things she wasn't sure she should keep. Every piece of paper looked harmless, but together they created a constant visual mess. And every piece created another decision. So Barbara created 4 destinations for incoming paper: action, file, read, recycle. That was it. There was no 5th pile called maybe. Because Barbara realized that maybe wasn't a filing system. It was postponement. Maybe I'll need it. Maybe I'll read it. Maybe it's important. Those 3 words had kept years of paper in her house. Once she started making the decision immediately, her dining table changed. Important documents were filed. Things that needed attention were put where she would actually see them. Reading material had a designated place. And junk mail left the house. Barbara discovered that clearing paper wasn't just about making the table look better. It reduced the number of tiny decisions waiting for her every day. And sometimes that is what clutter really is. A collection of decisions you keep postponing. Number 5. Furniture that made moving around harder. The 5th category surprised Barbara. Furniture. Some pieces had been inherited. Some had been bought years ago. And some remained simply because they had always been there. But one day, Barbara started paying attention to how she moved through her own home. A chair blocked part of a walkway. A small table had become a permanent clutter station. A cabinet she rarely opened was taking up valuable floor space. She realized something. Just because a piece of furniture fits inside a room doesn't mean it belongs there. Barbara wasn't trying to make her house look empty. She wanted it to feel comfortable. So she asked 3 questions about each piece. Do I use this? Does it make the room easier or harder to move through? And if I were furnishing this room today, would I choose this piece again? Some furniture stayed. Other pieces went to family, donation, or another home where they could actually be used. The result wasn't dramatic because the house hadn't changed size, but it felt different. There was more room to walk, less to move around, and fewer obstacles between Barbara and the things she actually needed. That mattered more than keeping furniture, simply because there was technically enough room for it. Your home should give you room to live, not make you navigate an obstacle course. Number 6. Things she kept for a fantasy life. This category took Barbara the longest. She called these her someday things. Exercise equipment she was going to use every morning. Craft supplies for a hobby she never started. Clothes for occasions that never seemed to happen. Kitchen equipment for recipes she had never made. None of these things were useless. That was what made them difficult to let go. They represented possibilities. Maybe someday. Maybe I'll start exercising. Maybe I'll take up painting. Maybe I'll start baking. Maybe I'll finally have time for that hobby. Barbara realized she wasn't just storing objects. She was storing a version of herself she kept hoping to become. That realization changed everything. She didn't have to give up trying new things. She simply stopped keeping large amounts of equipment for a life she wasn't actually living. She chose a few things she genuinely wanted to use. The rest went. And something unexpected happened. She stopped feeling guilty. Her home no longer reminded her of everything she wasn't doing. Instead, it began supporting the things she actually enjoyed. That's an important distinction. Your home should reflect your real life. It shouldn't constantly remind you of the life you think you should be living. Number 7. Things that required too much maintenance. The 7th category was anything that created more work than value. Decorative objects that needed constant dusting. Linens that required special care. Plants that demanded attention. Barbara didn't enjoy giving. Objects with complicated cleaning instructions. For years, Barbara had asked herself one question. Do I like this? Now she asked a better one. Do I like taking care of this? That question eliminated several things immediately. Barbara realized that loving an object wasn't enough if owning it made her life harder every single week. She kept the things that brought genuine pleasure. She let go of the things that brought obligation. Cleaning became faster. There were fewer objects to move, fewer surfaces to dust, fewer things to maintain. And more importantly, Barbara had more time and energy for herself. Not everything that looks nice is worth the work it requires. Your home should give something back to you. If an object constantly demands your time, space, and energy, it deserves to be questioned. Number 8. Things she kept out of guilt. This was the hardest category. Not because the objects were useful, but because Barbara felt guilty about letting them go. There was a gift she had never liked. Something a relative had given her years ago. Objects she kept because someone might ask where they were. And belongings that had belonged to people she loved, even though they didn't really belong in her home anymore. Barbara had to learn a difficult lesson. Appreciation and ownership are not the same thing. She could appreciate the person who gave her something without keeping the object forever. She could remember someone without keeping every item connected to them. And she could love her family without turning her home into storage for everyone else's belongings. That realization finally gave her permission to let go. She kept the things that carried genuine meaning. Photographs. Letters. A few special keepsakes. The things that truly mattered. The rest could leave without taking the memories with them. And that may have been Barbara's most freeing lesson of all. Letting go of an object does not mean letting go of the person, the memory, or the love connected to it. What changed for Barbara? 6 months after Barbara started this process, her house wasn't empty. It wasn't perfect. It still looked lived in. But something had changed. The kitchen was easier to use. Her closet was easier to navigate. Her dining table was available for eating again. The rooms had more walking space. Cleaning took less time. And Barbara wasn't constantly moving one thing just to reach another. Her daughter noticed the difference immediately. But Barbara noticed something more important. She felt less tired. Her home wasn't demanding as much from her anymore. She had removed many of the things that created unnecessary work. And that gave her something she hadn't expected. Energy. At 70, Barbara realized that decluttering wasn't really about creating a beautiful house. It was about creating a house that supported the life she actually wanted to live. The biggest lesson. If you're over 65, don't ask yourself whether your home looks like someone else's. Ask whether your home is easy for you to manage. If you're constantly moving things, cleaning around things, searching for things, or buying replacements for things you already own, your belongings may be creating more work than they're worth. You don't need to declutter your entire house this weekend. Start with one category. 10 pieces of clothing, 5 kitchen gadgets, 1 drawer of duplicates, 1 stack of paper, 1 piece of furniture blocking a walkway, 1 thing you've been keeping for a fantasy life, 1 object that requires more maintenance than you enjoy, or 1 item you're keeping only because you feel guilty. You don't have to do everything. You just have to make one part of your home easier. Because after 65, your home should work for you, not the other way around. Gux, close. Now look around your own home. Which of these 8 categories is causing you the most trouble? Is it the closet? The kitchen? The paper? The furniture? The things you've been saving for someday? Or the things you're keeping because you feel guilty? Tell me in the comments. And if you're helping an older parent simplify their home, share this video with them. But don't turn decluttering into another exhausting project. Take one drawer, one shelf, one decision, then stop. Tomorrow, do one more. That's how Barbara changed her home. Not by throwing everything away. By removing the things that made her life harder. Subscribe to Senior Decluttering Diaries for more realistic decluttering and downsizing ideas for life after 60. Your home doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to make your life easier.